Do you ever wonder, like, who else has lived in your apartment? Who slept where you slept? The lovers they took? The meals they cooked? Who they saw staring back in your mirror? Potentially, you could pass them by on the street without even knowing that you had ever shared a Welcome back, Black Stars. I'm Anastasia X, and I love art almost as much as I love Black people. So I created Black Star Reviews to shine a light on the amazing work by Black creatives in New York City and beyond. If you love art and Black people, I encourage you to go ahead and click the subscribe button now because you are in for a treat. Today we're reviewing The Fires, which is written and directed by Raja Feather Kelly. This is Raja's debut as a playwright, but he's no newcomer to the theater. He is a highly decorated choreographer and artistic director, and you can even see his choreography on Broadway right now in the show Limpicka. So what can one expect when a choreographer moves from the stage to the page? Let's find out. So as always, we dedicate each episode to an ancestor artist. To me, the themes in this show, The Fires, which we will discuss, brought my heart to the silver-tongued lover of love and romance, Luther Vandross. Now, you probably already know something about Luther. Even though he's transitioned to the other side, he is a more contemporary ancestor. And you might even have a favorite song by him, but if it isn't Never Too Much, you're tripping. Never too much, never too much, never too much. Fun fact, that is my go-to karaoke song. So my friends are sick of hearing me sing it, and I think they would say there is a such thing as too much. Never too much. Now here's the reason that we're dedicating this episode to Luther today. You know his song, Dance With My Father, where he talks about wanting one more chance, one more walk, one more dance with his dad, and he makes that same wish for his mom. That song always leaves me on the brink of tears, like just a few drops sitting on the bottom of my eyelid trying to break free. There is something that is so special about the love between a father and a son, or for some of us, the love between a father figure, not necessarily your biological parent. And as a man, which I am not, but as a man, it is important to have someone to be able to look up to. It is so vital. And that loss, that gap can create a hole in your heart and also serious pain. One of the characters in this show was feeling that pain, and Luther, who lost his father when he was 8 years old, can definitely relate. But there are two more ideas from the show that make me think of our dear, sweet Luther. In our Hell's Kitchen episode, I talked about Alicia Keys' ability as a songwriter. But let me tell you who could go toe-to-toe with Alicia Keys when it comes to the pen. I'm talking about Luther RONZONI Vandross Jr. He wrote 7 #1 songs, and he had 27 top 10s in his 54 years on Earth. And you know what his songs were about? Love. He was so romantic. And he was such a believer in the transformative power of love. Had he ever had a chance to sit down with my favorite love expert, Bell Hooks, I think they would have been able to see eye to eye on that. And this show is about love in such a deep and real way. Now, finally, and we talked about this a little bit in our episode about Fat Ham, which we dedicated to the author E. Lynn Harris, is sexuality. Luther was born in 1951, and it's not like people born in the 50s didn't come out, but Luther chose not to. He kept his sexuality personal, and he only shared about his romantic life with his close friends. Now, one of his close friends, you may have heard of her, her name is Patti LaBelle, and she shared 12 years after he died that he was gay. And that dynamic of is he, isn't he, and the rationale of not wanting to disappoint others, which Miss Patty says is the reason why he didn't come out in his lifetime publicly, that is present in the show as well. Luther's choices around disclosure were his own, but I'm grateful for what he did choose to share with us, which were his thoughts on romance and tenderness. So, a toast to love, a toast to whoever decided to record his performance at Radio City in 2003, which would end up becoming one of the last live performances he ever gave. And a toast to the Velvet Voice himself, Mr. Luther Vandross. We wish you peace, beloved. With the power of love, you got to believe. How did I hear about the show? I'm glad you asked. And I should note, I bought my own ticket to this show. I did not attend as press this time. So I'm on the mailing list for Soho Rep Theater, and I have been ever since 2014 when I saw the play that very well may have planted the seeds for Black Star reviews, which was In Octoroon by Brandon Jacobs Jenkins. What I love about Soho Rep is that I never fully know what to expect, but I always experience something that changes me. The theater is dedicated to radical productions and artistic autonomy. So when you see a show there, you're really going to get to see the artist's vision. In television, there's a writer's room, there's test audiences, things get cut for time. Even in a magazine, there are editors, fact checkers, things get cut for space. But in visual art like painting, the artist can paint exactly what they envision. And when playwrights have artistic autonomy, you get to hear exactly the story that they want to tell. Now, when I got the email from Soho Rep about discount tickets for a new show called The Fires, and I saw the beautiful Black faces of the cast and the creative team, I scrolled on to read a description. And I want to see if you can make sense of this. Fantasy, fiction, flirting and kissing, or fighting and fucking. Y'all need to get married and just die in each other's game-playing arms. In 1974, 1998, and 2021, 3 different men in a South Brooklyn Railroad apartment write, read, fuck, flirt, eat, and fight at the same time. The Fires is a surreal new play about being a somebody in a world of other somebodies while trying on love. To be honest, this description did not help me much going into the show, but it made perfect and complete sense when I came out. So let me tell you how I'd summarize it. In New York, and probably in other less cool cities, we have railroad apartments. They're called this because they're long and you have to move through one room to get to the next, like a rail car on an Amtrak train. But also, if you've ever been in a trailer park home, same setup. The house is just a long rectangle and every room is connected. And if you have a window, it's at the front or it's at the back, but not on the sides. That's just wall. So the stage for The Fires is just this very long, shallow rectangle. There is no curtain. Now the audience is looking into the full length of the apartment at once, as if one of the walls on the 2 long sides is fully transparent. They built a lot of these railroad apartments in New York in the 1840s to 1860s because they save a ton of space and you're not prioritizing windows for people. So not only are they pre-war, but there's no way that you will be the first tenant if you move into one of these. Somebody definitely lived there before you moved in. They took showers exactly where you did. They cooked their meals in the same kitchen. Chances are they put their bed exactly where you have yours, and they slept where you sleep. There's even a chance that someone died right there where you're sitting right now. In this show, we get to see 3 collections of tenants. There's a couple who lives there in 1974, a young man living on his own there in 1998, and a guy in there vaping during the pandemic, so 2021. But instead of presenting the show in 3 acts, 1974, 1998, and 2021, or closing and opening a curtain to show the transition back and forth between these eras, time has essentially collapsed. And all of the past and present tenants are in the apartment at the same damn time. It's wild. Like there's a sex scene in the bedroom in 1974 during a heart-to-heart conversation between a mother and a son in the kitchen in 1998. And the stage is so long, you can't even take it all in at once. So if you're like me, you're going to be missing parts of that mother-son chat because you're going to be a little nosy about the boots getting knocked in the bedroom. But almost like a ghost story, none of the characters can see or hear each other. They walk right past one another as they move from room to room. So to answer the question I asked myself about what we can expect from a choreographer turned playwright, it's this gentle tango through time, the way their shoulders almost brush but never touch, the way they're constantly connected by the space but never aware of what they're sharing. And it's all communicated through movement, and that is a story all on its own. So the set doesn't change, and it's the same apartment from the same perspective. Even the furniture stays the same throughout the eras. And there's some furniture hanging from the ceiling, like just out of view, but it never comes down, which I am curious about. And you've never been in an apartment that is this red. Like, yeah, you've been in an apartment where the bedspread and the couch are red. And maybe, the books on the bookshelf are red. But I promise you, you've never been any place that is this reminiscent of the inside of a rose. It's like a soft, warm red, and it's on the tables and the chairs and the pots and pans and the cabinets and the walls. The Mac laptop has a red cover on. The only thing that is not red in the apartment is the typewriter, which brings us to our characters. Now, the story starts in 1974, and there's a man, he's a writer, his name is Jay, and he's working on a story about Aphrodite. He's always on that typewriter, but he seems like very frustrated by his progress. And he lives there with his lover named George. George kind of like flits around Jay as Jay is writing, and George sees Jay as a creative genius, and he does everything he can to make him comfortable. He brings him food and coffee. He cleans up all his discarded pieces of paper from the typewriter. He reminds him to leave the house. He reminds him to come to bed. And you get the sense that something is like a little bit off about their dynamic, but you can't quite put your finger on it at first. Now, in 1998, there's a young man there named Sam, and he's very distraught about losing his father, who has recently taken his own life. So Sam is living in the apartment that used to belong to his dad's friend, and he's going through his dad's things, mostly his journals, because he wants to understand why and how his father this great man would resort to suicide. His mom and his sister come to visit him in this apartment every day. And even though all of them are grieving, mom and sister seem really worried about Sam because it's like he's the one who's taking the loss of their father the hardest. Now in 2021, there's a guy named Eli. Classic queer Brooklyn guy. You see this in his outfits, his musical preferences, his tendency to vape and also to pout. And he lives there by himself. He's subletting the apartment from his homegirl, who is Sam's sister. Sam is the guy from 1998. So Eli's trapped inside the apartment during the pandemic, and he's simultaneously trying to find and avoid meaningful intimacy. He doesn't want to admit to himself that he's in love with his friend Maurice, who he's been messing around with off and on for a couple of years, but they're both accusing each other of playing games. Relatable? I think relatable. In my opinion, Eli is the one who's doing more of the game playing, but I digress. So you have these three stories that are playing out in overlap. And because it's mentioned to us that someone is going to die, you start looking closely at each character in each era. The performers really keep you guessing the entire time. You can't help but make your own prediction on who you think it will be, and then you just start collecting clues that confirm who you think it will be. For what it's worth, the person I had predicted, the person I was most worried that we would lose, they made it to the end of the show. So when you go see it, I would be curious to know with whom your suspicions lie. During the show, the audience is trying to make sense of quite a few different things. What's the connection between the men who lived in this apartment? Eli, Sam, George, and Jay. Why is Eli running from love? What is he so afraid of? Why did Sam's father take his own life? Why is Sam's family so overly worried about him? Why does something seem off about Jay and George? And who will die and how will they go? Below the plot, the show is presenting you with a few different representations of love. So at each twist and turn throughout this single act play, the audience is probably also wondering, what would love do? I have two favorite lines from the show presented here without context. You are as little as the meaning you make. I love to endure you. Now that second one, this is either the most or least romantic thing that you can say to someone. The jury is still out for me. My first thought is around the idea of special. When I was growing up, someone telling you that you were special was generally a good thing. And often we were told that each of us is special in our own way. And I never would have even given that a second thought if I hadn't seen this play. And now I'm wondering if special is something that I should want to be. And here are three ways that it's framed during the show, and I'm paraphrasing. From a man to his lover. When I met you, I knew you were special. I would do anything for you. From a mother to a son. Your teacher told me you were special, and I told them that you were not. From a friend to a lovesick friend. He's not special, it's just Dick. The word was used so many times that this seemed like an intentional repetition. And so if special means better, greater, or otherwise different, which it does because I looked it up, I'm thinking, why would special represent something that we wouldn't want to be? My second thought is around race. I ended up sitting next to someone who works for the theater named Sam. Hi, Sam. And we compared notes after the show. One thing that we both picked up on was how this show played on race in subtle ways. And I won't speak for Sam, but here's my take. Sometimes when a show tells a Black story, it feels like violence and racism are in the room with us. And at times that's necessary for the story, but then there are other moments when it's strange and it feels overdone. While anti-Black violence and racism are real and require us to be vigilant, there are many times when we as Black people experience joy and love and sadness in a human way. I know that Black joy and Black love are hashtags, but sometimes in the moment when I feel it, it's actually just joy. In this show, everyone was Black, and besides a heated exchange between Jay and his brother when he comes to visit, Blackness is not a topic of conversation. It just exists. It's just present. And often in my own Black life, this is how it feels. I call my friends and we talk about the most salient aspects of our lives, but rarely do we deliver monologues to each other about how our Valentine's night in was the pinnacle of Black love, or how we snuck out of work midday for a croissant and a latte to secret away Black joy, or how when we got caught in the rain without an umbrella, we threw up our hands and cried tears of Black sadness. We just tell our stories to each other and we feel understood. I don't have to remind my friends that I'm experiencing these feelings in a Black body. They know me. And I felt known by this show. It was in the subtleties, in the music the characters listened to, their ways of speaking and being, the tender way that the mother held her son, the snappy comebacks between the siblings, the complaint about somebody's guacamole being bland. These were familiar to me, and I craved that feeling of comfort and welcome and familiarity in performance spaces. When I was a kid and we lived overseas, my parents always gave the Black nod to other Black people when we crossed paths. And it's like that. We don't have to stop and talk about it, but we know that we're seen. I see you. I see your humanity. Speaking of being seen, I appreciated these depictions of love, queer love, Black queer love. Recently, I was on the phone having a Black conversation with my Black friends about Black love. Just kidding, I don't do that. No, but we were talking about those terrible Bumble billboards. Like the company put up these ads essentially telling women to give up celibacy so they can come back to dating apps like Bumble. And women expressed their outrage on TikTok, and it was even covered in New York Magazine. Bumble apologized, they took the billboards down, but it was a wild little 3-day news cycle there for a minute. At one point in our conversation about these billboards, we were discussing the couples that we look up to, like essentially marriages that we want to emulate. And the list is short. Dr. King and Coretta, they fell off that list when evidence of his infidelity became common knowledge, and the same goes, unfortunately, for Jay-Z and Beyonce. When I tried to suggest Ossie and Ruby Dee, somebody mentioned that they had an open marriage, and that cut them from the list. All the couples any further back in history are likely to have had an unbalanced power dynamic. Like, was it love tying grandma and grandpa together, or was it just the patriarchy? So basically, that leaves us with Barack and Michelle, and who knows what details we'll find out about them someday, although I'm really, really hoping that we find out none. I would like none more details about their marriage. So if you think that a list of Black love role models for heteronormative couples is short, it's even shorter when you filter that list for queer couples. So I'm grateful for this story as an image of what queer love can be. And what's refreshing is that this story is not rooted in pity. It's not a tragedy where everybody gay dies at the end. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. In the end, two characters come together after a lot of push and pull. And the choreography of the way they finally kiss, it has this like bittersweetness. One character has his hands up as if to show, I'm not here to hurt you. But there's other connections to be made about innocence and vulnerability when you're in this position. When they finally surrender to each other, when they finally trust each other with their hearts through their bodies, it's such an intimate display. It will melt your cold, dark heart. And I'll speak for me, it had me thinking about the walls that might be in the way in my own life. If my consciousness were to watch my life, my choices, and my actions through an invisible wall, the same way that the audience watches the fires, maybe I would be better able to see the ways that I could choose love with the people around me. The Fires by Raja Feather Kelly has earned 4 Black stars. And if you are a regular watcher, you're probably like, you give everybody 4 stars. But that is not true. 4 stars is the spot of excellence, and it's an indication that a show really, really moved me. Throughout this review, I've talked a lot about Raja's storytelling and direction. I've even touched on the set design, but now I want to do a little rundown on the actors. The actors, like some of them, like Ronald Peet and Jason Veasey, they had to pull off multiple roles and they did it with ease. I'm talking wildly different demeanors, and they even moved through the time periods. Amazing, excellent. Phillip James Brannon was entirely believable as a writer visionary on the brink of a breakdown, and he would do this thing where his eyes would go all glassy, almost like he was gonna cry. And I don't know about anybody else, but I felt like he was staring right at me, which was very intense and moving. Then you have Beau Badu, who added complexity to this present day Brooklyn guy. Like, I was feeling sorry for Maurice when he was playing all these games. And I was really in the audience rolling my eyes and getting upset like he was talking to me on the phone. So clearly he nailed it. Jon-Michael Reese, who played Maurice, had the challenging task of crossing that fourth wall and joining the audience as a viewer while still in character, which he nailed. And the 2 women in the cast, Michelle Wilson and Janelle McDermott, they felt so familiar to me in the way they portrayed their characters. They were really good at drawing you into the pain that they were feeling, and that helped me to lean into the show, so much so that I did shed a few tears. I already mentioned how this show made me feel seen as a Black person and also offered a hopeful depiction of queer love, and that plays into the stars as well. I'm so curious to know how Raja wrote this play, like whether he wrote each era and then chopped them up to overlap them, or if he wrote it in a zigzag across time. Whatever he did, I think it was masterful. So again, 4 Black stars for The Fires. Who would I take to this show? Oh, I want to take people who love to see this show. The kind of people who lose themselves in love, who believe in how it can transform you, who want everyone to experience it. I take anyone who wants to see queer people be happy. While everyone is not happy all of the time in this show, there are couples that you'll want to root for. And like I said earlier, I think we're really starved for those. I'd take anyone who lived through the 90s because the costumes were on point. and you'll get a kick out of the flashback. It was too much denim, y'all. What were we thinking? Finally, I would take grown folks. Life is long and tough and complicated and somehow still beautiful. Sometimes people have secrets that they take to the grave, but take somebody who might divulge the stories of their younger years with you to see this show, and then go talk about all their business over a drink. There are far more Black-owned restaurants to choose from when you're downtown, so after the show, you could walk right around the corner to Filet Gumbo Bar, owned by Eric McCree. They have an excellent cocktail menu, and it's literally never the wrong time for gumbo. Plus, you can customize it with what you do and don't eat meat-wise. Personally, I don't like chicken in my gumbo because gumbo should be from the sea. But the thing that you should really order is the crawfish etouffee with the popcorn rice. And if you don't know what popcorn rice is, you need to go on ahead and find out. It has been lovely to tell you about the fires, and I'm praying that I have convinced you to go see it because it is a story that we all need to hear and experience. And just like a good pot of gumbo, Raja put his whole foot in it. And after he revises his bio to say choreographer, artistic director, and playwright, I cannot wait to see what he'll write for audiences next. I'm also going to go see his choreography in Limpica because I'm curious to see if I could pick up on his style in a different setting, time period, genre, all that stuff. Thank you all for watching this episode of Black Star Reviews. I can't wait to tell y'all all about my first in-person art event this weekend next time I see you, so stay tuned. If you enjoyed this review, please remember to subscribe to my channel and put a like on the video. Plus, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok. In the meantime, I am sending you black love and starlight. You can never have too much. Never too much, never too much, never too much. Stay shining, y'all.